We have always had, since the day we settled here, a gentle understanding with we do not stray into their wood, they do not come into our village. I have always pictured them in...
When The Village arrived in 2004, it carried with it the weight of expectation that followed every project from M. Night Shyamalan. After redefining modern supernatural thrillers with The Sixth Sense and exploring comic book mythology through Unbreakable, Shyamalan had built a reputation around atmosphere, moral allegory, and last-act revelations that reframed everything that came before. With The Village, he didn't simply attempt to craft another twist-driven thriller. He constructed a deliberately paced, almost old-fashioned chamber piece disguised as a monster movie, and in doing so delivered one of the most divisive yet thematically rich entries in his filmography. Set in an isolated 19th-century rural settlement surrounded by dense woods, the story introduces a tightly knit community governed by a council of elders who have established a strict boundary between themselves and the forest. The woods are said to be inhabited by mysterious beings the villagers refer to as those we don't speak of. A fragile truce exists. The villagers do not enter the woods, and the creatures do not enter the village. This premise alone establishes a suffocating tension. The threat is never fully visible at first. Instead, it lingers in ritual, in whispered warnings, and in the collective fear that shapes daily life. Shyamalan leans heavily into stillness and suggestion, allowing silence and color symbolism, particularly the forbidden color red, to function as harbingers of danger. At the emotional center of the film is Ivy Walker, portrayed by Bryce Dallas Howard in one of her earliest major roles. Ivy is blind, but she is also the character with the clearest emotional vision. Howard plays her with sincerity and quiet strength, avoiding sentimentality and instead grounding the character in warmth and resolve. Opposite her is Lucius Hunt, played by Joaquin Phoenix, whose restrained performance conveys a man wrestling with curiosity and moral conviction. Lucius questions the village's isolationist philosophy. He wonders whether fear has become a prison rather than protection. Through him, the audience begins to sense cracks in the carefully constructed narrative upheld by the elders. Then there is Noah Percy, brought to life by Adrien Brody. Noah is childlike, unpredictable, and emotionally volatile. Brody's performance adds an unsettling layer to the film because Noah operates outside social norms, yet is deeply attached to Ivy. His presence introduces unpredictability not just in terms of plot, but in tone. The tension he brings is human rather than supernatural, subtly shifting the source of fear from the woods to the people themselves. As the narrative unfolds, small transgressions escalate the sense of dread. Red berries appear on the ground, clawed marks are discovered on doors, livestock are found skinned. These moments are staged with patience, accompanied by an evocative score from James Newton Howard that relies heavily on strings, especially a haunting violin motif that amplifies both romance and terror. The music becomes almost a character in its own right, swelling in moments of intimacy and tightening during scenes of pursuit. Rather than using loud shocks, the film relies on tonal consistency, making even quiet scenes feel precarious. The film's aesthetic is meticulous. Shot by cinematographer Roger Deakins, the imagery is painterly, with soft, natural light and earthy palettes that evoke a world untouched by modernity. Interiors are illuminated by candlelight, casting elongated shadows that reinforce the theme of unseen threats. The forest is dense and foreboding, yet paradoxically beautiful. Deakins frames it as both a barrier and an abyss. visually embodying the boundary between ignorance and knowledge. The camera frequently lingers at the tree line, suggesting that what lies beyond is not just danger, but revelation. What distinguishes The Village from conventional horror is its thematic focus. The creatures, while visually striking in their cloaked, skeletal design, are ultimately less important than what they represent. Fear, in this story, is institutionalized. It is cultivated, curated, and weaponized. The elders, including Ivy's father, Edward Walker, reveal motivations rooted in personal tragedy. Each has suffered loss in the outside world, violence, crime, grief so profound that it compelled them to withdraw entirely. They did not merely seek solitude, they engineered a social experiment. By fabricating the myth of the creatures and enforcing strict rules, they believed they could build a sanctuary free from the brutality of modern society. This revelation reframes everything. The monsters are costumes, the claw marks are staged, the howls in the night are manufactured. The twist is not simply that the creatures are fake, it is that the entire 19th century setting is itself an illusion. The village exists in contemporary times, preserved within a wildlife reserve funded by the elders' wealth. Airplanes occasionally pass overhead, but the villagers are conditioned to interpret any distant sound as something else. The outside world is not a distant century, but a short journey beyond the forest. Shyamalan's decision to anchor the climax not in spectacle but in moral confrontation is what makes the film linger. When Lucius is gravely wounded and requires medicine that cannot be found within the village, Ivy volunteers to cross the forbidden woods. The irony is potent. The blind character must navigate both literal and metaphorical darkness to reach the truth. Her journey through the forest is one of the film's most suspenseful sequences, particularly when she encounters one of the costumed elders' disguises left unattended. The tension peaks as she stands at the edge of a pit, unaware of how close she is to falling, and as a creature approaches. The choreography of that scene underscores the central idea: fear is powerful because belief is powerful. When Ivy ultimately reaches the boundary and encounters a park ranger on the other side of the fence, the film transitions from mythic horror to social commentary. The ranger's confusion mirrors the audience's own recalibration. The elder's utopia is revealed as both noble and deeply flawed. They sought to protect innocence, but in doing so, they denied agency and truth. The decision to continue the lie even after the revelation becomes known to a select few suggests that fear can be self-perpetuating when justified by good intentions. Upon release, The Village generated intense debate. Some viewers admired its ambition and thematic depth. Others felt misled by marketing that emphasized creature horror. The film's box office performance was strong, reflecting the drawing power of Shyamalan's name and the cast's star presence. Over time, reassessment has softened some initial criticisms. What once seemed like a simple twist now reads as a meditation on trauma, parental control, and the ethics of protection. In a post-9/11 cultural climate, the idea of retreating from a violent world into constructed safety resonated differently than perhaps intended. The performances anchor these ideas in human emotion. Joaquin Phoenix brings quiet intensity to Lucius, embodying the impulse toward progress and curiosity. Bryce Dallas Howard delivers what many consider the film's emotional breakthrough, balancing vulnerability and courage with remarkable control. Adrien Brody's portrayal of Noah adds tragic unpredictability. His actions ultimately catalyze the film's turning point, reminding the audience that even in a controlled environment, human complexity cannot be eliminated. Shyamalan's screenplay is deliberate in its pacing. Dialogue is formal, almost archaic, reinforcing the illusion of another era. Yet beneath the stylized language lies contemporary anxiety. The elders' council scenes function like philosophical debates about governance, safety, and moral compromise. Is it ethical to lie if the outcome is peace? Can innocence truly exist without exposure to danger? These questions give the film intellectual weight beyond its suspense framework. Technically, the production design deserves equal attention. The village feels lived in, with handmade furniture, period-appropriate clothing, and communal rituals that reinforce cohesion. The strict avoidance of the color red operates symbolically, representing both danger and forbidden knowledge. When red appears, berries on the ground, cloaks worn by the creatures, it disrupts the visual harmony, signaling rupture. The careful coordination between costume design and thematic symbolism reflects a level of intentionality often overlooked in mainstream thrillers. James Newton Howard's score amplifies the emotional stakes, particularly during Ivy's journey. The violin solos convey longing and fragility, transforming what could have been a straightforward survival sequence into something almost operatic. Music bridges the gap between romance and terror, underscoring that love, not curiosity alone, motivates Ivy's bravery. Her determination to save Lucius reframes the story as a love narrative embedded within a moral parable. In retrospect, The Village stands as a transitional film in Shyamalan's career. It marked the peak of his early mystique while also exposing the risks of audience expectation. The twist, while structurally clever, overshadowed the film's thematic ambitions for many viewers at the time. Yet as discussions around misinformation, echo chambers, and fear-based governance have grown more relevant, the film's core premise feels prescient. The elders' experiment resembles a microcosm of any society that isolates itself under the guise of protection. The film ultimately leaves viewers in a morally ambiguous space. The elders choose to maintain the deception, rationalizing that the outside world remains violent and corrupt. Ivy, now aware of the truth, agrees to uphold the secret for the greater good. There is no triumphant dismantling of the system, only a continuation with modified awareness. This unresolved tension is precisely what gives the story durability. It resists easy categorization as horror, drama, or romance, instead occupying a space between genres. Visually restrained yet thematically expansive, The Village challenges audiences to interrogate their own relationship with fear. It suggests that monsters are often inventions of those seeking control, and that safety purchased at the cost of truth carries its own moral price. Through careful performances, evocative cinematography, and a narrative that privileges atmosphere over shock, the film constructs a parable about community, trauma, and the delicate balance between protection and freedom. More than 2 decades later, conversations about The Village often reveal as much about audience expectations as about the film itself. Some approach it anticipating another supernatural puzzle. Others now recognize it as a study in collective psychology. Regardless of one's stance, the film remains a distinctive artifact within early 2000s cinema, emblematic of a moment when mainstream thrillers were willing to engage in philosophical inquiry beneath genre surfaces. In the end, The Village endures not because of its twist alone, but because of the questions it dares to ask. How far would you go to shield those you love from pain? Is ignorance a form of mercy or manipulation? And if fear can be manufactured, what responsibility lies with those who create it? Through Ivy's quiet courage and the elders' flawed idealism, the film invites viewers to consider whether true safety lies in isolation or in confronting the world as it is, however imperfect.